All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Citizens Fancast. Today, got a special guest. I have my brother on, and we'll be discussing the Chelsea match as he is a Chelsea fan. So, looking forward to doing that. Also, be discussing some transfer news. Obviously, a lot of rumors going around City today with a certain former City player, and then we'll get into a little bit of the injury news and then a little more season predictions just based on what we both saw for between both of our teams the first weekend here and just with the rest of the league as well. So with that being said, let me bring Ryan to the stage here and welcome to Citizens Fancast.
Wow.
So before we get into the match, we're going to start with your kind of background, your story. Everyone who's listened knows how I got into City. And so tell your story on how you got into supporting Chelsea, because I don't even think that's a story I know.
Yeah, so started playing club soccer when I was in 7th grade. And I don't know the exact year. I'm thinking it was maybe 8th grade into 9th. Well, let me back up. So I think my introduction to professional soccer was back in 2006 for the World Cup. So I vividly remember watching that Italy and France final going into PKs. You and I would it was at the time where I was in 6th grade. We got to stay home alone for the first time, kind of. And that summer, when our dad would go to work, we would go outside, we'd shoot PKs on his lunch break, and then we'd go back in and we'd watch the World Cup the rest of the day. So really, in the United States, back at that time, you really only had access to international soccer. So club soccer wasn't really accessible, and really wasn't until 2010 started to see some of it, but more when NBC took over, and I think it was 2012. But as far as Chelsea, so I started really being into the international game. I was a big supporter of Spain, and Fernando Torres was another part of that. And so, we'd play FIFA, and I always liked Chelsea just because growing up, had a dog named Chelsea that passed away when we were pretty young. Don't even know if you were born, probably 3-4 years old that I was. And so kind of, like Chelsea. And then when I was playing club soccer, we had a clinic put on by a former Chelsea player. And I cannot for the life of me remember who this person was. But I'm thinking it was about 8th grade. It was by a former Chelsea player. And then, I was instantly hooked kind of through FIFA and stuff. But still at the same time was really only accessible was international soccer. So, was kind of a supporter, but wasn't until really Fernando Torres went to Chelsea that I really became a huge Chelsea supporter. And probably one of my most vivid memories with that was that 2012 Champions League run against Barcelona when Torres ended up scoring the winning goal in the semifinals to make it to the final. It was hooked then, but before that, I remember watching 2010 kind of taping on VHS Chelsea and United game and watching that back. But even then, there wasn't a huge accessibility. You got maybe one game every once in a while, but it really took off then. As it became more accessible, and now I don't miss a game. I remember one thing kind of back in college, so 2012, when NBC started taking over the broadcast, and you didn't have access to every game, but you kind of had 3 time slots or so, and people making fun of me because I would wake up at 6:30 on a Saturday morning and making sure that I was watching Chelsea.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think by the time I got to college and we were both there and being roommates for the year, obviously we kind of knew what the deal was just watching a game and kind of starting with both of us having multiple screens and watching multiple games at a time. I think that was kind of um, also another thing that NBC helps offering us with Peacock and whatnot. But yeah, and just once we speaking for both of us, watching that Spain team, you latched onto Torres. I obviously latched onto Villa, and then I kind of learning more with Silva and Villa playing together and kind of following that route. But um, I can attest that you've always been a Chelsea fan as long as I remember. So, uh, yeah, cool story. But yeah, I don't have a lot more to say beyond that. So we'll get into the match then from there. So starting with the starting lineups for City, Ederson, Rico Lewis, Akanji, Diaz, Guardiol, Kovacic, Bernardo Silva, De Bruyne, Savio, Holland in his 100th City appearance, and then Doku uh, rounding it out. Kind of the lineup I expected and predicted earlier this week with obviously Bobb going down and his injury really wasn't a ton of surprises. The only thing that I was back and forth on is if Grealish was back from his injury and healthy, if he would be able to start. But obviously, he wasn't, didn't get any minutes. So I would assume that was out of a precautionary measure just to make sure that he didn't aggravate anything. But the Chelsea lineup, Sanchez in goal, Gusto, Fofana, Colwill, Cucurella, Caicedo, Lavia, Palmer, Fernandez, and Cuckoo and Jackson. So thoughts on Chelsea's lineup? Was it what you expected? Was it any surprises?
I think it was kind of a safe lineup, um, in a sense. Maresca didn't make any huge decisions. There's obviously the big thing with Sterling coming out and having his people make a statement. I think that's ridiculous. But as far as, interesting to see the midfield three with Enzo, Lavia, and Caicedo going forward. I don't think that's going to be something that's going to work. I I don't like Enzo and Lavia in there together. I think Lavia is actually playing a lot better than Enzo and is a lot more athletic. So it'll be interesting to see how Maresca figures that out. One, thing is Enzo is kind of the captain right now, or at least vice captain, while Reece James is out, and he's not going to be dropped, right? We don't have a third captain at this point with Chilwell kind of being out on the fritz right now. Um, so he's got some tough decisions to make. The other thing was Nkunku out on the left wing there. I think kind of inhibited us a little bit. We'll talk about that more probably later. But we didn't really have an out and out left winger, which I think really changed how we played as well. So he played a couple people. Jackson not really up to match fitness yet. You could see that he had some glimpses of kind of what he can do, but really wasn't up to match fitness. Palmer still not up to match fitness, and so figuring out some of those dynamics still. We'll see, and those aren't excuses either. I know that you guys definitely don't have your best lineup there either, so I don't put a ton of stock into this game just because I think everyone's still figuring out their best lineups, getting up to match fitness. De Bruyne for you guys, he is someone who hasn't played a ton. Foden, so some of those things you'll figure out as well. So I don't think you guys ever fully got out of second gear, and you didn't need to, but we'll get into more of that analysis a little bit later, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I'll get into that very shortly. So going over the goals, Holland with the first one, an assist from Bernardo in the 18th, and then Kovacic kind of killed it off in the 84th with against his former club, but did not celebrate, which I'm sure as a Chelsea fan was nice to see, considering what Havertz did
The
last
clown
year.
Kai Havertz. Yeah.
But possession, 52% City, 48 Chelsea, which I think is kind of, we've kind of seen 50-50 just even last year already. Chelsea's kind of, I guess, been one of the teams we don't really outpossess as much as the other teams. But from the get go, and they mentioned it right away with Pep and his wingers. Doku out on the right, Savio out on the left, putting a right-footed winger on the right side and a left-footed winger on the left side. And from my opinion, I don't think it worked. And they ended up swapping 15 minutes in, which Pep said later was actually a player decision. He did not tell him to do that. So great awareness by both of them, in my opinion, to make the switch on to sides that they felt that they were going to be more effective. I mean, I'm the same way as I've played more and gone on more in. I prefer to cut inside as well. Not that I play a ton, but I can understand just from that aspect as to why they would want to do the same. And really, once Doku got over there, got going a little bit, that's kind of what led to the first goal with him making that pass inside, cutting inside, making the pass inside to Bernardo, and then Holland being able to finish. I thought he took a little too long to release it, and I thought he lost the opportunity, but was still able to just get it right over Sanchez. But as far as other things I noticed kind of in the first half from City side, and then I'll let you go, just kind of what you saw with Chelsea. Savio, I think one thing that Pep will agree that he liked was uh, his tracking back, his ability to come back on defense and kind of, you know, at least make the effort to do it. I think he had that struggle last year with Doku being able to Doku not knowing always that Pep wants his wingers to come back and track back and play defense. But from a general aspect, I thought Savio was good one on one, mostly once they switched sides. I didn't think he was too effective against Gusto, but his passing seemed a little bit off. I thought in the Community Shields, he was a little bit better at his final ball, making the right passes, making the right crosses, but it seemed a little bit off. And it's just something that is going to take time. He doesn't have a ton of time with the team. I mean, he's still only been with them for 2 weeks now, essentially. And then, beyond that, he's gotten 10, 15 minutes of actual game time. So just with the team getting up to full speed and all the players getting there, the English players first rejoined training last week in Walker, Stones, and Foden. Rodri hasn't even trained yet. So obviously the whole team isn't back yet. But from a general perspective, what I kind of saw in the first half is, you said that we didn't really get out of second gear. I felt like we seemed a little bit slow, honestly, seemed a little bit off. Passing was a little bit off, a little bit rusty. I don't take too much stock into it with it being the first week. Everyone isn't up to fitness yet. Everybody, we do have some new players to kind of integrate into the lineup a little bit more and just playing without Rodri as well. It's going to take time. I'm not too concerned, but definitely showed room for improvement.
Yeah, if I think about the City perspective, I actually thought the opposite as far as especially your pressing was fantastic. Um, so something that like obviously you can tell that you've been in that system in the Pep system. It was just the pressing was phenomenal, and you talk about your center backs, just the strength that they had as well. A couple times where just that it's crazy, but the upper body strength that they have to just kind of get in position and put a person off. I thought was phenomenal. So yeah, I don't think that you came out of second gear, but at the same time, I don't know that you had to because we weren't quite there yet. We had some glimpses of what I think we can get to, but we're still a ways off of obviously you guys and where you've been in the last few years.
As far as um, I mentioned Savio, he did get injured at the end of the half. From what Pep said, I think he's going to be okay moving forward. And so he came out after half. Foden came on in my opinion, I don't know if he was ready, and I think that kind of gets back to just him not being in training a lot. And I think uh, you look at Palmer, for example, in the Chelsea lineup, and I think they, in a way, had comparable performances to the extent of they didn't look like they were fully ready for their fitness. They didn't look like they were fully themselves. They seemed kind of a step behind in a way. I think that's just not spending a lot of time with the team. From my perspective, I think Foden could have probably McAtee could have came on over Foden in my opinion, just because he's been with the team and has, gotten the first team minutes and everything. But I think still at this point, Foden's probably trusted a little bit more. Where kind of the same thing for you guys, where with how well of a season Palmer had last year, you're not going to put him on the bench for something like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard to replicate that this year. But at the same time, yeah, he's got those just moments of just brilliance. So even if he has two of those and he's not up to full fitness, those two might lead to goals. So it's kind of one of those where it's a big game and you're not going to drop them kind of regardless.
You mentioned City's center backs and their strength. I did think Akanji made quite a few simple mistakes that he probably shouldn't have, just with giving the ball away, not moving the ball quick enough. I think that's where, again, if this game was played in, say, October or November, you might have taken advantage of those chances more than what you did.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the lineup. It was a 4-2-3-1. Not something that we've really seen in preseason from Chelsea yet. So I was kind of texting you towards halftime, but it really. So you think of Nkunku, you think of Palmer. They are two um, forwards who are going to invert, right? So that they're wingers, whatever you want to say. They're more of an attacking mid or a central forward. They're going to play off that striker and play inside. And so the problem was we didn't have any width. So you guys really had at times Rico was kind of getting into that center defensive mid position, that inverted outside back. And so a lot of times we kind of caught you in a three back, but the problem was we didn't have a winger outside. So what if we had Neto, which I don't think he's fully up to his fitness either with the team, but we didn't have any pace on the outside. So to try to stretch those outside backs, and then Enzo at that attacking mid, he's a great distributor, but he wasn't getting into those attacking positions except for the one time when he ran into Jackson. But he wasn't getting into the positions to make a penetrating run in behind. So I think that was a little worrisome. I think, I guess, worrisome in the sense that I'm really struggling to see how Maresca is going to set up this system to be able to have your best players in. You're going to have Nkunku, you're going to have Palmer, but everything I've seen from preseason is those, outside forwards, those wingers, they need to be touching the line. Well, that's not Nkunku, that's not Palmer. They want to drift inside, and so for his system to work, you need a Neto, you need a Madueke, I guess. But then you're really struggling to figure out how are you going to fit in Lavia, who's played fantastic in preseason. How are you going to fit in Caicedo? How are you going to fit in Enzo, Nkunku, Jackson, Palmer, and you throw in maybe even Felix, who we'll probably talk about a little bit later. But and then Neto, it's like how is he going to fit all these people in and get them in their best positions while still playing the system that I think he really wants to play. I don't think we have the players for the system that he wants to play, so that's a little worrisome. He did show some tactical flexibility as far as lining up in that 4-2-3-1 and didn't have an outside back inverting into that defensive center mid, something we saw a lot of in preseason with Gusto, a little bit, and James, and then Cucurella in just that one game, but didn't see a ton of it either. So it'll be interesting. I think, like I said, this was a little conservative the way he was playing, and I think in the next couple of weeks he really tries to implement his system. But I'm really intrigued to see how that works because we've got so many of those attacking players. I think Nkuku has to play as a 8 or a 10. I think Felix, if we get him, he's going to be the same thing. You put in Drewsbury Hall, you put in Enzo. Like, those are all very similar positions and not the way they play it. But I really struggle to see how he's going to fit everyone in. I guess we have Conference League, so maybe he can get some game times for players then. But it'll be interesting to kind of see what he does in the coming weeks.
I would agree. I think you guys have a lot a lot of players, obviously, to kind of figure out where they all fit in. There's been with all the players you brought in over the past 2 seasons, it's hard to struggle or it's hard to see where you fit all the pieces in. But I think I didn't think it was too bad, honestly, from my perspective. I think from like I said, I think City looked a little more vulnerable than I would have liked in the first match. It didn't necessarily hurt us. I think that came down to a little bit of rust on Jackson's part, just on some of his finishing where he was close and didn't quite get it. But uh, as far as being exposed, I do think that was slightly with Rico Lewis's position in the match for the most part. Not that he did anything wrong. I think it's just how we were set up with having uh, a lot of times 3 players back while we attack. And I think, in all honesty, Rico Lewis could have been man of the match. For my choice, it was probably Kovacic. He did incredible as a Rodri replacement. I know a lot of people have been looking for us to sign someone as a Rodri replacement, where, in my opinion, I think we've kind of been set with what we have. I think if you put the midfield we had today or yesterday out there with Kovacic, with especially with Bernardo and his work rate and his ability to kind of just be everywhere, especially without Rodri there. I think Kovacic tends to sit back more in the sixth role as opposed to moving forward. He will still move forward with the ball and attack. Saw it in the preseason against Barcelona, which created a goal for us on a pass to Grealish. Saw it against Chelsea with the finish himself. But I think he's got the ability to do it. It's just a matter of him actually executing. But back to Rico Lewis, I think he had an incredible performance defensively. Is probably the best I've ever seen him play defensively, and knowing when to be where to be in the attack, moving centrally, moving out to the wing, overlapping, inverting his run. Kind of just, it felt like he always knew where to be, regardless of what the circumstance was. So I think he's really cementing himself as a right back. When he first came and displaced Cancelo, I saw glimpses of Kimmich in him, and I've seen him uh, being compared to him, being compared, and I think it's a fair comparison. I think we've seen Pep do that with players, with Kimmich, with Lam, kind of that player who can play a CDM and uh, a right wing or a right back at the same time. And I think the only thing that really inhibits Lewis in his game is his size. But if he can get a little more strength on him, I think he'll be okay. But as far as other players that kind of stood out for me, I think Doku did really well in his ability to kind of take players on, play the ball in, things like that. His final ball still does need some work. I noticed that. I think it's something he's going to continue to work on. We saw it get better as the season went on. Maybe it's just rustiness at the beginning of the year, but I do think he does need to work on that a little bit more going forward. But I think Pep was pretty much okay with what he saw. He only made that one sub at half because of an injury, and kind of like I said, there's definitely room for improvement, but it's not too worrisome. It's match day one. We've got some time to kind of click and get going. I really look at it as if you're not clicking after the first the first international break and you still see things all over the place, that's kind of the time to start worrying. But until then, I think it's kind of, you run with what you got and you kind of work out the quirks as you go. But from your perspective, did you see anything else, I guess, noteworthy or worrisome or promising from Chelsea in the first match?
Um, yeah, Romeo Lavia, I think, is going to be a fantastic player for us. His passing range, he was just looking that up. He was 38 for 39, so played 97% of his passes. He had one big chance created. I really like him next to Caicedo, but then worry as far as, like I said, Enzo. I really do like Enzo as a player, but worry that he's not going to fit in the system. He doesn't have the legs. He doesn't have the physical prowess to be able to be running and tackling and stuff. So Lavia is the person who I think is really going to be someone this year who people aren't expecting, and just excited to see what he has able to do for us.
Yeah, and I think he's been highly rated at City as well, just with when we let him go. A lot of people wanting him to stick around, but obviously we weren't able to make that happen. So unfortunate for us, lucky for you. And I think he's going to be moving forward. I think he's going to just continue to improve as well. But uh, moving forward into just some general news, your former manager in Pochettino is going to be the U.S. men's team manager. As far, why don't you give your thoughts on it first, and then I'll give mine after.
Um, I so he came in last year. I think he's a great man manager. You looked at when he got sacked, there were so many players that came out and really expressed how much they appreciated him. Tactically, I don't know that he has a system or style of play that is identifiable that you can say like, oh, this is how he's going to play. So I don't know. He's not this this is a little bit of my Chelsea bias, but he's not a serial winner. We didn't see him win a ton with Spurs. He's got a couple cups and stuff with PSG, but I think that's pretty easy. So it's hard to tell. I don't know. You look at the women's side, Emma Hayes coming also from Chelsea. She's a serial winner, right? And we saw her stamp that into the Olympics. Patch, I think I liked him. I wanted him to come back, and we saw what he was able to do at the end of the season. And I think that's really down to him being a man manager and really the culture he was able to build. And I'm not in that USA camp to be able to be seeing exactly, is it a personnel problem or is it a tactics problem? I don't know. But if you can get the best out of the players, we'll see. I still think they're definitely a ways behind the rest of the world. So we'll see what he can do, I guess.
Yeah, I think he's a good manager. I mean, I struggle to see for I think he's probably the best manager that the US was going to be able to bring in, but I struggle to see what he gains from it. I don't think they're in a position to win with him, or just they don't have the personnel to win right now, unless he can make some drastic tactical change that I guess he can see that the rest of us aren't. I feel like people who know can take a look at the players, take a look at the situation, and see, you know, all the cards on the table. It doesn't look like the right formula is there. Maybe he can do something. I mean, it's I I wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe hit like a quarterfinal in the World Cup if he sticks around that long. I presume he would, but I as far beyond that, I think you're just going to get beat by talent and just put teams with better chemistry. I think more on the international side, you can have good players, but if you don't have the chemistry between the players, I think you're going to kind of fall short. And I think that's kind of why you see England underperform. I don't feel like the chemistry is there between the players, but you got teams like the Netherlands, for example, who I think could have made the final. Obviously, they were close, and I feel like they don't have as much talent, but they have the chemistry. They know how to play together, and I don't know if the U.S. has that identity or can have that identity created where they can make up the gaps for the talent.
One thing I worry about is defensively. So last year on record was Chelsea's worst year, I believe, in the Premier League. Don't quote me on those stats, but I believe it was the worst year defensively since the inception of the actual Premier League. Um, so maybe down to, I mean, our defense has some problems as far as our people, but he's not someone who's going to build this defensive fortress. So I think of someone like Thomas Tuchel, who was also available potentially, and he is someone who came into Chelsea and really built this defensive stability. And I think with the lack of potential attacking prowess, you need to at least lock down the defense then, and that's something that I don't necessarily see from him. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and when Chelsea had a better defense than what the US has personnel wise, I think that's their weak point to start with. So I don't think they have the attacking ability to offset, just going goal for goal with a team and trying to outscore them and win a match 4-3 or something like that. I think it's got to be more grinded out 2-1s, 1-0, things like that. So moving on from that into the injury news. So like I said about Savio, it seems like he will be okay moving forward. As far as what Pep said post match yesterday, he expects him to be ready to go for the next match. And then the big one, the heartbreaking one, Oscar Bobb, who we all expected to have an incredible season this year, broke his leg in training, and I still haven't seen conclusively what happened, whether it was contact with another player or it was off the ball and just landed wrong or something like that. But broken leg is confirmed. Originally, Pep was saying that he hoped to have him back in December. Now he's saying January. Regardless, I think December, January is probably an accurate time, just with the broken leg. It's just my biggest concern is the plan without him. As far as I'm concerned, I think the plan was to move forward with him. I think, in my opinion, he had the starting role kind of locked down until someone else showed otherwise. So it's going to be a little bit to deal without him. But that's why we have Savio, we have Doku, we have Grealish. As long as those guys can stay healthy. Obviously, 3 out of the 4 of those have picked up something already, and we're only in match week 1. So uh, it might be a little bit of a struggle. I don't necessarily think we need to sign someone with him being out. We have so many players who can fill that space. Foden went out there this weekend. Bernardo can play out there. McAtee can play out there. I don't know if Pep wants to play him out there, but McAtee can certainly do it. So I think the biggest thing for me is making sure that when Bobb returns, that he is ready and is going to be able to contribute to the level that we expected him to prior to this season. But as far as Chelsea, any big striking injury news worth mentioning?
Um, well, just Reece James, but he's out on suspension. I think he's got 2 more games left, rolling over from last year. So I haven't seen anything as far as a timeline. I'm thinking it's more just precautionary at this time, knowing that he's out right now on that suspension anyway, that they're just kind of taking it easy. I would think for sure he'll be back by that international break in September there, but haven't seen too much. The other one who kind of went down, but I think it was more of just a cramping situation, was Cucurella yesterday. And I think he's going to be someone who is very, very important for us this season. And so hope that it was just a fitness issue, but I haven't seen anything out today as far as it being any major concerns.
All right, sounds good. So moving from there into transfer news, Calvin Phillips out on loan to Ipswich, who we have this weekend, but I'm pretty sure by the Premier League's or the FA rules, he can't play against us anyway. I'm not even sure if he. I'm pretty sure he didn't play against Liverpool. I didn't watch that match. But anyway, out on loan for the season. If there was ever a team for him to go and shine with, Ipswich would be the team for that to happen. Just considering their current situation and just coming up to the Premier League. But other transfer news: Gundogan is rumored to maybe come back. City, from what I've seen, City want him. He wants to come back to City, and it would just be kind of making that deal happen. I'd assume if both parties want it to happen, it can happen. It will happen. It's just a matter of how much of a fight Barcelona is going to put up in the process. So hopefully, if that does go through, that's something we see happen in the coming days, which kind of brings up other questions on, is there going to be a fee? Is there going to be a swap? Obviously, the ideal swap would be Cancelo. We bring Gundogan back. We finally get Cancelo off our books, so we don't really have to deal with him anymore. And from my opinion, that would be the ideal scenario. But it also begs the question of, if Gundogan comes back, we have Kovacic. I think he's got a solidified role in the squad. What happens to Matthias Nunez? Does he have a role? Does he move on? I think that'd be an interesting situation to watch. Just I know there was some interest from the Saudi clubs earlier in the summer. I don't know how much steam was behind that, if it was true interest or not, or just a rumor flying around. But as far as Gundogan, I'd happily take him back. I know some people were mentioning his age and whatnot, and potentially coming back at his age and tarnishing his legacy. And uh, he was our captain for our treble year. He's not. Nothing's going to hurt his legacy, and it's not. It's hard for it would be extremely hard for him to do something that bad to tarnish his City legacy. So I mean, even if he can come back and give us some decent time, he was good for Barcelona. He was good at the Euros for Germany, which he retired from there as well today. I saw an interesting situation to watch. I'm pro bringing him back. It just raises some other questions on what may happen, but. As far as on the Chelsea end, you mentioned Felix, and explain what's going on there, and then any other potential signings that you would potentially see or want to see. And I'll ask you to leave out anything with Sterling, because we'll get into that a little bit in the next part here.
Yeah, so João Felix from Atletico Madrid. Sounds like today it's almost finalized. Swap, basically a swap deal for. I shouldn't say swap deal, but there'll be two separate deals. But Conor Gallagher going to Atletico Madrid, and then João Felix coming our way. This is obviously his second stint with us. When I look at La Liga, Atletico Madrid would be my kind of my second favorite team. So kind of nice to see some Chelsea players playing for them and them coming our way. I don't like this signing. Not that I don't like Felix. I don't see how he fits into our system. I don't think he is in a position that we need right now. And I don't think that he fits Maresca's system. So, we're supposed to get Samu, and that deal fell through just because of his medical, and then Gallagher was supposed to go the other way. But really, really struggling to see how he fits into this system. I think he is a similar player to Nkunku, but maybe a step down. I think he does have a lot of potential. He's still only, I think, 24 years old. So if we can figure out how to get the best out of him, he brings that flair. But in Maresca's system, in Pep's system, they're very similar. You need to have that pressing ability, and that's something that we saw Felix does not have here the first time. And so it's a little worrying. As far as other transfers, I have to kind of. So the broadcast, I think, did Chelsea a little dirty looking at, I think they said we have like 43 players or something. And I feel like it was kind of lazy in what they were doing. They didn't talk about how many players we've sold in the past. They didn't compare it. I just saw something going around online that you actually had only two less players than us in your lineup or in your squad. So, um, they just took the headline. There is a lot of players that are going to leave yet this year. You talk about Carney Chukwemeka. Maresca came out and talked about after the match as someone who he saw as having a lot of potential, but maybe needing, with some injuries, some more game time. Uh, Chilwell, I think they're really trying to find a spot for him. Um, you said Sterling. I could maybe see Madueke coming or leaving with Felix coming in, and he's someone who I don't, because I don't think we have enough of those out and out wingers. Um, Going down the list, there's going to be so many more loan options as well. You think about Petrovic. We've got like 6 keepers in the book, so some of those will be loaned, some of those will be sold. So you talk about Trevor Chalobah, he'll be sold. So there's going to be a lot of movement from Chelsea this year yet. And as far as positions that we're looking for, obviously we're rumored with Osimhen. I don't want him. I worry about the price tag we're going to pay for him and him coming in. I talked about Torres. I don't know that he ever lived up to the hope that Chelsea fans really wanted, and that was due to the price tag. You talk about Morata, Lukaku. We've brought in these big strikers, and they haven't been able to live up to the price tag. And just because there's so much pressure in negative media around Chelsea, and if they don't hit the ground running right away, it really takes a toll on the players. And he's someone who's going to come in with that big price tag, and he did have kind of a down season last year, so I worry about him coming in as well. I would rather just write it out with Jackson and Guiu, who didn't look too bad in preseason. He's someone who I think has some really good hold-up play. Guiu, I worry about his, finishing as far as getting in the box. So if we can find that striker who can be in the box and finish our chances, I would love that. I just struggle to see who's out there that's really going to tick that box for us right now without a astronomical price tag. And the other thing I will say is these new owners, I love what they've done around the structure of reducing the wage bill. And so, a lot of these strikers, they want to be on huge wages. And if you look at the wage bill, we've reduced it. Most of our players, I think we've got about 3 players who are actually over that 150,000 pound a week wage. So it'll be interesting to see as well as far as the wage bill and how some of these players end up, because then some of these other players want to be pushing that boundary. So Osimhen will be obviously someone who will be expecting a big wage as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I think honestly, you talked a lot about not making everybody work and out wingers, and I feel like you have a lot more players that fit more as uh, center forwards as opposed to wingers. I think just watching Napoli the last 2 years, I don't think Osimhen fits in your thing. I think a lot of his service came from Kvaratskhelia going down the left wing and crossing it in, or a low ball into him. And unless you have those out and out wingers, he's not going to get that type of service to be as effective in your squad.
Well, and the other thing I think is look at the counterattacking. So it's the style of play. He's great in the counterattack, but that has not been Chelsea's problem for the past 5 years. It's being able to figure out that low block, and we can possess all day, but everyone seems to put that low block on us, and we cannot figure out how to score in the box. So that's really my concern as well. Is I think Osimhen's a great player on the counter attack, but when we have possession in and around the box to be, getting those cutbacks and stuff, I don't know that he is going to live up to the price tag. Not saying that he's not a great player. I just don't know that the style of player that Chelsea is looking for in the box, that he's going to check all those boxes for us.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I mean, in without taking out of context, I mean, he's a better player than Jackson, but I think he's not going to offer you more than what Jackson currently offers you.
Yeah, and I don't want it to come at a detriment to Jackson's numbers. Obviously, I mean, you can't look at Jackson yesterday. He was very raw, not up to par. He had, I think, like a three, glimmers of kind of what he can do, but definitely not up to par to the Jackson that we saw last year. So I would really like to see him develop this year and take that second step that he did a really nice job last year. So taking that step forward this year into the second year.
Yeah, and I think, Jackson's an easy target to pick on with his some of his misses, but I mean, he's has been a better finisher. Or I mean, even if you look at, for example, someone like Darwin Nunez in his first year with Liverpool and even his second year, I think Jackson was a better finisher. So, um, I think I'm a little high on Jackson. I saw him last summer in the preseason and thought he was going to be a good player for you guys. I think it took him a little longer to get going than I expected. But I think as far as what you needed and everything, he did what you kind of expected by the time you looked back at the entire season as a whole.
Yeah, he's someone, he could be pushed out wide as well, but we'll see. He is one of those people who's a little bit of a polarizing uh, personality. So as a Chelsea fan, I love it, but I can see where some of that criticism comes in as well.
Definitely. So we mentioned Sterling and kind of just his whole thing and putting out a statement. It's match day one. I would agree that I don't think a statement need to be put out. If a statement was going to be put out, I don't think it need to be put out by his team. It could have just been put out by him. Obviously, he's had his issues with City. He left a sour taste in City fans' mouth by leaving, and then you saw the video of him not signing a City jersey in his first couple weeks with Chelsea. And I know a lot of City fans don't like that. I quote unquote got to meet Sterling in a way and got his autograph. So I kind of have a soft spot for him there. I don't necessarily like his personal attitude around the game sometimes. And if, in my opinion, I think he's not going to be a Chelsea player come the end of the month. I've seen rumors to United, rumors to Arsenal. I don't really see him leaving England. It really wouldn't surprise me if he ended up at another top 6 team.
Yeah, he's another polarizing topic. I think when you talk to Chelsea fans, I don't think he's lived up to the hype, but he hasn't lived up to how he was for City. He is our highest earner and definitely does not play like that. He can be very passive in the way he plays. So I would love to just get him off the books right now. There has been some rumors with him going to Juve as well. I don't know. From what I've seen, those have kind of stalled, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of enter that Italian market a little bit as well.
If there was a swap deal for Chiesa, would you take that? Because I know he's
Yeah,
kind of off the books there in Juve as well. Looks like he's on the way out.
definitely. And that's who they've been kind of rumored as a swap deal. I don't think there's anything that ever is officially swap deal. They do them as two separate, but yes, as kind of a trade, definitely. Because I think
One
the
more
other
thing.
thing is Neto can go play on that right wing as well. So
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I think Neto was someone City fans kind of saw as a player to come in. I don't think we ever needed him. I think as far as what you guys have, he kind of fits you better just to the fact that I don't think we need him. But I think that'll turn out to be one of your better signings for the season.
yeah, one thing on Neto. So I think you saw how dangerous he can be. That first like 5 minutes after he came on, we looked really good, and I think it was you know looking at we had that winger that we were missing kind of in the first half, but those first 5 minutes, I was like, wow, this is going to be a game. And then I think it was down to that fitness again, where he wasn't quite there to be able to sustain it. But one thing on Neto is this is a personal thought, but I think he is the closest player we have had to Eden Hazard. He's always been someone who I haven't followed him a ton, but whenever we're playing Wolves or something, he really reminds me of Eden Hazard. So I am hopeful that he can emulate some of that.
I'd I'd agree he's the closest player you've had to Hazard since Hazard left. But one more player I just wanted to look at from a City perspective, and I kind of mentioned before his versatility in Bernardo Silva. Um, Coming into the season, I didn't necessarily know what his role would be. Then he comes in for the Community Shield and kind of showed that he's still got a lot to offer. Not that he didn't. He's not old. I think he just turned 30 this the day of the Community Shield actually. So um, I think in all honesty, especially with Bob going down and everything like that, I think Bernardo Silva is going to be someone I look at as kind of our key to the season. I think he's going to be someone whose versatility is going to be something we lean on a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the year he ended up playing the most minutes for us, just because he can play an 8, he can play a 10, he can play on the wing, he can play an outside back if we absolutely need him to. So I think his versatility is going to be something we lean on a lot. I'm looking forward to see how Pep continues to use him, especially like I said with Bob going down. I think he's kind of got a cemented spot in the starting lineup for the most part. But I'm interested to see what kind of season he will have. I think he's obviously had great seasons in the past. For me, I think kind of standout season was the treble season, mostly just because of that. What he offered us at the end of the year, his game against Madrid, his first half against Madrid is still the best first half I've ever seen from a player. But as far as on a Chelsea side, who is one player you look at that's going to be really a key to your season? Maybe outside of Palmer, if Palmer's able to replicate his season of last year, but who's someone else who you would expect to have kind of that season that you guys lean on a lot, whether or not it's someone who's, I guess, the best way to word it is, you had Palmer last year. I'd equate Palmer to kind of Foden, but Rodri was kind of the behind the scenes guy. So even if there was someone like that, who would you say is going to be that guy for you?
Uh, well, I think it's an easy one, but probably Nkunku. Depending on his position, I don't think he's best out on the wing, and I don't think he's best as a striker when he's playing that 10 or 8. We saw it in preseason. He looks really, really good, and he was our leading scorer in the preseason. So I would say Nkunku, if he's playing centrally behind the striker, is someone who I think is probably going to be our leading scorer with the current squad, unless that changes potentially with a forward coming in, a striker. But definitely him. If I had to go outside of that, I think Cucurella is going to be a really big player for us as well. We saw it into last year, towards the end of the season, and then into Spain as well. So he's someone who has some versatility as well. He can play that left center back position if we invert the right back into that defensive mid position, or he's someone who can also invert into that defensive mid position. So I think he's going to be pretty crucial for us. maybe not from an attacking sense, but if I had to pick an attacker, it would definitely um, Nkuku. The other interesting player coming back from injury, over a year-long injury, is Wes Fofana at center back. He is someone, him and Colwell, who I thought were a little passive in the first half, especially on Holland's goal. I thought that Colwell could have done a little better. Definitely I would say luck. You would say brilliant touch from Silva to get it to Holland, and then obviously Holland's finishing ability. But I do think Cole could have done a little bit better there. But I do think the center backs grew into the game as well. So interested to see that partnership with Colwell and Fafana as they continue to grow throughout the year.
Yeah, and I think also looking at your center backs, I don't remember which one it was that didn't really step to Kovacic on his goal either. There was kind of a lot of space where he kind of ran through your midfield, and that was kind of just passive defending by your midfielders. But just
Yeah, that's one thing that has been a huge problem for us in the preseason is our back line. You saw some improvements against Inter in our preseason game the before City, and then against City, I think we saw some big improvements from what we saw. You look at when we played you against in the preseason, and Holland getting his hat trick and basically gifting him. We saw all those defensive instabilities. So I think this, the defensive line is getting there. It's going to take a couple more weeks, and I do think there's going to be kind of some lapses occasionally, but I am very impressed with what Maresca's done in the last 2 weeks as far as getting that back line and really the tactical flexibility that Maresca showed as well. The last 2 games, you haven't seen a lot of that inverting. I think you'll see much more of it in some of the games where we're expected to win, and then he'll look to build on that against the big teams. But I think in some of the big 6 games, he might go with that more traditional back four, and then once he kind of gets his players into his system, we'll see more of that inverting. I think we saw a lot of it in preseason on the right side, so it'll be interesting once James comes back in. He can kind of invert. The concern from a lot of Chelsea fans that I'm hearing is the right back as far as Gusto and James and their best abilities being overlapping, which if you look at Palmer, he kind of likes to tuck in, and they have that really good ability to overlap and get those crosses in. So I'm just interested. I think Maresca is going to be a good manager. I really do. I want to give him some time. And you've seen how much he's adapted his system even in the first 2 weeks here, since returning from America. So it'll be interesting. I'm excited. A lot of Chelsea fans have said, "Okay, our real season starts now." I don't think anyone had much hope against you. There was a little bit of hope of, well, maybe if there's a time to play him, it's at the beginning of the year when they're kind of not fully ready either. So uh, give Maresca to the international break, and then I think we can really start to analyze his patterns of play and really judge what he's doing.
so with all that being said, where do you think you end up at the end of the season? Where do you think you finish? Because personally, um, I don't know if I see edge of top four. I was thinking Villa top four. I'm thinking from what I saw from them, I know they won. I feel like you performed a little better that against us in a loss than they did in a win. So I would say I have you somewhere in the 4 to 5 spot currently, but where do you see yourself finishing?
I think the aim has to be top four. So I would say maybe fourth. Anything worse than sixth, I think, is a failure and concerning. So probably in that 4 to 6 range, but I really think the aim has to be top four. You look at this being year three under Clear Lake, it has to be getting back into that Champions League. And I think the biggest reason for that is the shirt sponsor. You look at, we didn't have a main front shirt sponsor in the game yesterday. So Clear Lake is betting on that we are able to market that Champions League. So I think it has to be top four.
I I think you for sure have to get top 6. I obviously top 4 would definitely be the aim, but as far as I do think that there should be no reason, as long as you stay healthy, that you can't win the Conference League. So you guys could be the first team ever to win Conference, Europa, and Champions League, which would guarantee you into Europa for next season. But I think you'd still want to get that guaranteed spot moving forward, not have to put all your eggs in one basket on having to win that. But as far as a what would be your ideal lineup for your best lineup for the season moving forward? So anyone who watched last week, I gave mine, but I've actually for City, and I'll give it again here because I've changed it slightly just with the Bobb injury. So I for City, I have Ederson, Akanji, Diaz, Ake, Guardiol, Rodri, De Bruyne, Foden, Doku, Bernardo, and Holland, with Bernardo being out on the wing, and then the across the back line with Kanji either as a right back or stepping into the midfield up with Rodri. But um, kind of something we've seen similar. I think Pep's kind of trying different things and moving away from that a little bit. So I'd expect him to continue to try new things, especially if uh, Kovacic keeps playing the way he does. If we get any more injuries, if Gundogan comes in, we might see a lot more experimenting, especially in the midfield, moving players around and whatnot, and kind of seeing what he can do to kind of get that upper hand. I think every season we kind of see him do something different to try to get that upper hand on opponents, kind of outthink them and out tactic them with a kind of new way to go. But um, that's my thoughts from City's perspective. What are your thoughts on with how you see your new manager wanting to play and everything, and how do you see what do you think is going to be your most effective or best lineup going throughout the season?
So if I had to pick keeper, I think Sanchez is playing better at the moment, but if I had to go long term, I'm going to say Jurgensen. Uh, in goal, center backs, I think I would keep our pairing of Fofana and Colwell. Outside backs, I'm going to go with Cucurella and James. Although I want to see a lot of rotation, I think Gusto is almost just as good as James. James is world class, Reece James, but Gusto is a phenomenal player as well. So those would be my outside backs. I would put in the midfield Lavia and Caicedo. I'm actually going to drop Enzo and then put Nkunku as your attacking 10 or 8. Neto on the left, Palmer on the right, and Jackson up top.
Yeah, I would say that's probably along the lines where I would go as well if I was picking Chelsea's. But uh, into next week, so City has Ipswich on Saturday. I like I said, I didn't watch Ipswich. It was the early morning kickoff, so I didn't really feel like getting up to watch Liverpool beat up on Ipswich. So I saw the highlights from the most part. It looked like Liverpool was the better team. They ended up with the 2-0 win. I'd expect City to be able to come out and win. I don't think. I feel like the team seems pretty motivated right now. I know there's all the talk about around complacency and just whether or not it's going to happen, or whether the players have won everything. Why do they keep going, or what reason do they have? But obviously, we're striving for 5 in a row. But I'd expect to see us look a little bit better against a worse opponent, just things clicking, fitness getting up a little bit more. As far as the starting lineup, I'd expect the same as we saw this weekend against Chelsea, but I do think Grealish will come in for Savio. Uh, just not knowing what's up with his injury and with Grealish being back, I think Pep is looking forward to Grealish having a good season this year based on the preseason he had and based on the work he's put in, kind of having an off year last year. I would say we'll see Grealish start. But just based on fitness, I think he'll kind of keep rolling with the same defense. I don't it like I said, to me, it was obvious Foden wasn't at full fitness, so I don't expect to see Foden in that starting lineup yet. And the same thing with Stones and Walker, just kind of easing them back in. And with Rodri first getting training this week, I don't see us really going to him yet. And especially, with how the players performed. There's no reason to drop Rico Lewis. There's no reason to drop Kovacic. I think those would be the two guys that you may look at, have Rodri come in, have Walker come in. But with how those two are playing, there's really no reason to move them to the bench right now. Keep their confidence high, keep them playing at a high level as long as they are. So I'd expect him to keep rolling with those guys, give Rodri another week of rest, more than deserved, and just, ease him back in. If we didn't need him this weekend, odds are, or this past weekend, odds are we won't need him next weekend as well. But if I was to predict at home, I'd say I'm going to go 4-0 with a City win, and we move up into staying tied for first at least, and move on with 6 points. But Chelsea has Wolves on Sunday, and what do you expect there as far as performance, potential scoreline, lineup?
Um, so I'm going to be hopefully optimistic. I'm going to go with like a 2-1 score line. I can see our back line making a careless mistake or something. I don't know if Neto is fully fit to start yet. So I'm going to say like maybe Mudryk comes in and plays that left wing. And I'm thinking Lavia is dropped, so pushes Nkunku inside. And we'll go with Neto coming in with a late winner against his former club to win it for us 2-1.
All right. So all that out of the way, I have some questions for you, not really relating to too much, but I'll let you give your answers. I'll give my answers, and we'll get through the list. I got like 8 or 9 questions here, but starting out with, who is your current favorite player in the Chelsea squad?
Ooh, um, probably Palmer.
Palmer. I thought maybe going Palmer as well with the former City. I'm gonna go Lavia instead with the Belgian. But who is your current? This one probably isn't as easy. Who's your current favorite player for City?
Mm, we'll go with, with a Chelsea. Well, there's really 3 Chelsea contingents in there, right? Um, we'll go with the Chelsea Academy, and we'll go with Ake.
Okay, I feel like I thought you might go Kovacic just because he had, I guess, the best Chelsea legacy in a way.
Mm.
Um, Mine's obviously Foden. But who is your favorite all-time Chelsea player?
Um, unpopular opinion, but Torres. I talked about that already. I think about if I think about what my when I think of like Chelsea and when I really got to watch them and kind of growing up, it was that 2010 through 14. You talk about Hazard, Juan Mata, Oscar, Willian, Torres, Drogba was in there, Lampard, Terry, Cahill, Azpilicueta, Ivanovic, Ashley Cole, I think was in there right around there. So that would be my, like, when I think of my Chelsea, that would be my Chelsea. But Ramirez, John Obi Miguel, like that type of Morales with his mohawk. Um, and if you want to, I'll throw out one Chelsea player that you absolutely hate from our FIFA days would be Demba Ba. He always was the most
I thought
average player, but I could figure out a way to score with him against you.
I thought you were gonna say Mikel because he never scored in real life, and yeah, I felt like you scored against me with him every single time. But do you know who my favorite Chelsea one would be all time? I feel like it's pretty obvious.
Mm, no, I don't think so.
I'd go Hazard, and I mean, and that's just kind of just with Belgium and everything, and I think more. I think there was a long time where I was focused so much on City, I didn't watch or care as much about other teams, and as I started watching more and stuff like that, just watching, uh, you know, I think that's more where it was Hazard's time to kind of take over and control the squad. But probably a harder one. Who would be your favorite City player all time?
Um,
It can be a current one too, if it would be.
no, I think there's there's two that I think are come to mind. One with Atletico Madrid connection in Aguero. I think he just the obviously so in the Chelsea fans, if they can't win the league, I think out of the top six, they all collectively want City. I think we we actively cheer against the other top six. City, we're like, well, I guess if we can't win it, then um, you're the one who hurts the least. So to see you guys win it over United definitely helped, or Aguero. And the other one I think who's a really really good player, and we talked about that Spanish connection, is David Silva.
Yeah, and I would I don't speak for all City fans, but just with myself and just between the two of us, I mean, I would obviously, you know, I if City's not going to win, I'd prefer Chelsea. I'd rather at least you get be happy over neither of us. But and I despise all the red ones, and obviously Tottenham can't win anything, so uh, Chelsea is the obvious choice there. And then my City choice would be, I mean, it's hard to pick between De Bruyne and Silva. Company's obviously up there as well, but those would be kind of my top ones. So, who would be your favorite current non-Chelsea player, and that includes former Chelsea players as well? Any player in the world,
Um, can I
even though
give
I think
you?
everyone's already played for Chelsea, so it's kind of hard.
No, I'm gonna give you a cop out answer here. I'm gonna say Alex Morgan.
I I guess I'll accept that one. Um, if you had to pick a men's player,
um, I'll go with Conor Gallagher in Atletico Madrid,
I said
or
they
maybe
couldn't have played for
Azpilicueta. They
they
can't
couldn't have
play.
played for Chelsea either. So no former Chelsea
Um,
players.
fine, we'll go with Griezmann.
Okay, that one I will accept. Mine's a toss up. depends on the day between Amadou Onana, not Andre, and Alexander Isak. But who is your favorite men's non Chelsea player all time? So someone who never played for Chelsea, but doesn't have to be a current one. Current player, I should say.
Um, we'll go with Via. That would be
Well,
it.
that's mine too. So, all right, and then what is your what is your favorite all-time Chelsea memory?
I talked about it already, actually. It was actually not even the Champions League final. Well, so the 2012 Champions League final was pretty big with Drogba scoring on that header. But for me, it was actually leading up to it, and I didn't even tell that whole story. So the semifinals when Chelsea played Barcelona, down to 10 men, Torres scores. It was at a time when we didn't have access to the Champions League games with Paramount or any of that, and so I was actually listening. I remember being in our kitchen. We had a computer on a desk there. I don't know if you recall this as well, but listening to, I had found a radio broadcast of the game, and just that description of Torres going around the keeper and scoring, and Chelsea moving on to that final in 2012 is probably my favorite memory.
I think that's one of the like Chelsea memories that's like or like the thing I can like picture from the like picture of Torres like with the ball past the keeper from like the goal line where you can see it uh right before it's going in. But if you could have dinner with one player in the current Chelsea squad, who would it be and why?
Mhm. I don't know. Um, hmm, I don't know. They're also new, so there's not a huge connection. We'll go with Reece James just because him coming through the academy. I think he's going to go down as a Chelsea legend. So we'll go with Reece James.
All right. And then last question, and I think I know the answer to this one. But if you get a phone call this week and you're asked, you're needed, you got to go suit up for Chelsea. What
Well, they're
position are you
screwed.
playing?
Left bench.
If you're starting the match, even if it's for 3 minutes, what position are you playing?
Well, it'd have to be an outside back. But not doing it well. Not anymore. Maybe 10 years ago, I could have. I still wouldn't have done anything well, but it would
Your
be,
fitness might have been a little higher at least.
yeah, right or left back. I don't know. So I've got
Okay.
a question for you actually, and we talked about
What?
this, so you won't have a reaction, kind of, but maybe for some of your listeners, they can chime in on the socials. So it's been rumored that the Saudi League is interested in Vinny Jr., who apparently has a buyout of $1 billion. I'd be interested, and I know your response to hear if maybe so. I know your favorite player is Foden, and you said that you would not sell Foden for $1 billion. Maybe more a bigger person would maybe be Holland, but would City supporters sell Holland for $1 billion? And if you do not say yes, I think you are insane. As I said to you, Foden's not dying. You could still watch him, but to be able to set up the success of your club to sell one player for $1 billion, I think you have to say yes because the amount of players that you could buy would be crazy and set you up for years to come. But be interested to hear your reaction after maybe thinking it over and what your supporters have to say as well.
I mean, personally, I think any player except for Foden, and that's mostly just because of I'd literally sell any for a billion except for Foden, just because of what I think he means to City and the fans, just where he came from, being with the club his entire life. I think there's a lot of people who picture him with City his entire career. If you know, in a world where that really doesn't happen a ton anymore. So I think that's why for Foden, I wouldn't. I think basically anybody else I would, although there'd be a lot of players. It'd be hard to replace certain players, like, for example, like an Ederson. I mean, you're letting a keeper go for $1 billion, but it's hard to get his distribution and things like that. The things that are kind of irreplaceable in the team right now. I think it's easier for you because, like you said, you have so many new players. You don't have connections with the players as much.
Yeah, but there's still like, yes, maybe if you would have said like Torres back in the day, but or Hazard maybe, um, you would say no. But even then, like $1 billion, that sets up your club for I think a lot of success. So I can see your argument, but I still think you'd have to say yes.
Speaking of that, and this is completely off topic, and I didn't even mean to mention this, but did you see the anything with Madrid's game this weekend?
I just saw that they tied 1-1, and I did see uh, Jude Bellingham at halftime. I think it was halftime. I'm not positive. Just kind of saying that the defensive work was too much, and so that the three attackers needed to score. So basically, he could be lazy. He didn't come out and exactly say that, but yeah, I did see that they tied 1-1. I believe it was a goal from Rodrigo, uh, and that was about it.
Yeah. So if for anyone who saw their goal, so the big question has been: is there enough ball slash? They're playing three essentially left wingers. From what I saw, and I think it was on the goal, all three of them were huddled in the exact same area on the left side of the box for the goal in like a 5 yard radius of each other. They just had no one central, no one on the right wing. So it'll be interesting to see if that works. I think Madrid expects that to work with a lot of uh, high quality slash, I guess, I don't know what I'm trying to say, highly hyped up players. But I think if we saw anything like PSG a couple of years ago, where having a bunch of individually talented players doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I think that's all I got for today, unless you have anything else that you want to throw out there.
No.
So thank you for coming on and joining. Come back sometime, maybe. Maybe we can do this again next time City and Chelsea play. Maybe we'll have a completely different discussion because we'll be fully going in the season. I think they play in February next time.
That sounds about right.
But thank you for coming on and giving your opinion on Chelsea. I don't think I have any Chelsea followers, so if you know someone who's a Chelsea follower and they'd be interested, make sure you tell them to listen. But starting next week, I'll be back to doing shows on my own for the foreseeable future. Just getting back into that rhythm a little bit. Maybe we'll ask some people here and there, some of those other big pages that I'm communicating with all the time on here, who I get along with. But thank you guys for listening. You know where to find me and where to follow me at Citizens Fancast on Twitter or X, Instagram, and TikTok. Subscribe on Spotify, on YouTube. Like the videos. Share the content, please. and go out and listen to the other city podcasts and city content. I know we all appreciate it, and I'll do a pretty good job of supporting each other. So, thank you guys for listening, and I will see you guys next week.